Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Test, Fail, Learn, and Grow. And no, I am not in my normal studio. I'm on the road. I'm in Mount Pleasant, Michigan here for some special weapons tactical training. So that should be awesome. I'm sure I'll have some videos for that. But this is the show where we go beyond the highlight reels. We're getting into the real work that it takes to build a business that actually matters. But here's the truth. Every breakthrough comes with a backstory. We talk about it all the time, right? 90% of the time we fail, but it's how we learn from those failures that's going to make a difference in the outcome. And as you know, I'm Adam House, and today's guest has spent his entire career helping others do just that. Cut through the noise, get real about what's holding them back, and move forward with clarity. But before we get into that, I mentioned I'm up here for the special weapons training and had dinner last night with a couple snipers. And when I say snipers, I asked him what his longest distance was. And he said, oh, it's 3,000. I think I was like, oh, 3,000 feet. He's like, no, 3,000 yards. So I was just trying to put that in perspective of actually being able to aim and shoot at something almost 2 miles away. But if you think about how that applies to business, right? There's the shotgun approach. It's spray and pray. I need more leads. I need more body. And that's going to equal more sales. But in reality, it's the sniper approach that is really what creates focus and intention when you're doing things. There's so many opportunities out there. I call it death by 1,000 tools. You want this technology, this AI, but at the end of the day, the more work you do to make the complex things simple and use less to do more, not use more, and you usually end up doing less. So as we get into today's episode, I want to introduce John. So him and I, we spoke last week. He's the founder of 1440 Consulting and the Mortgage Broker Builder. And he's got nearly 3 decades in the mortgage world and a lifetime of sales. And as you know, somehow I ended up back in the mortgage business. So my first business was selling leads to mortgage companies. And here I am 30 years later, back providing leads to mortgage companies. It's interesting about the mortgage space. It's kind of like the Hotel California. You can enter, but it's really tough to leave. And if you do get out, sometimes you're just going to end up going back. So John, he's the guy that teaches people to stop spinning their wheels and start building with focus. And like all of our guests on the show, he didn't figure it out by getting everything right. He figured it out the way most of us do, all of us do that are honest. It's by getting something wrong first. So John, welcome to the Test, Fail, Learn, Grow show.
Hey, it's good to be here. And I'm also very intrigued about this long range shooting. You can say that like horns and animals and stuff behind me. I'm into shooting stuff as well, which is probably a different topic. But
well, I should connect you with these guys because they do civilian training. So today's like level 1, then 2, then 3. They're probably at level 100. So I was talking to them last night. You get people showing up, they bought the Glock on the way to the training. And then, you've got some more experienced people. So I've done basketball training before, but, training people with weapons, I would be a little nervous.
Yeah, it's people and weapons are just, it could be a little bit nerve wracking. I grew up in Northern Michigan, though, in a military city. So I grew up in Grayling, which has Camp Grayling. You may not know this, right? So like just the military was part of me growing up. Like I saw more military people than I did anything else. So it became very, commonplace for those things. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, is it?
We're not, but it's interesting. And we're just going to have a conversation. So let's start where, most good stories begin. I know you're an entrepreneur. You see a problem, you see something's broken and you want to fix it. And so you have this idea to launch Mortgage Broker Builder, something to help new brokers get set up and, it started strong from what our conversation said, but walk us through what that looked like in the early days. What were you building and what did you think the real challenge was?
Yeah. So after, 26, 27 years in the mortgage space, a lot of it spent, at Rocket Mortgage and different places. I was very bullish on the fact that more and more people would be going out, and you did a little bit of dabbling in that TPO space. More and more mortgage people would go out and want to start and open their own shops. And so I said, well, how can I take what I know and inject it into there? So I started a company called Be a Broker. And what I did, I looked back and I said, well, if I was becoming a broker today, what would be the tools that I personally needed? And built out this massive, white glove. I did everything from setting up an LLC to naming conventions, how you choose your company name, all the bells and whistles. Thought that it was going to be super sweet, was able to sell it, here or there, but it didn't get really the traction that I wanted. Right. And I probably, when it was all said and done, launched about 24 brokers. So I helped them set up shop, and some of them are out there crushing it. Some of them didn't make it, but I had it's kind of a belief in my head that people were going to move here. I was going to be the conduit to help them get there. And that was me, 2 years ago. And last job prior to that, I was a chief revenue officer for a fintech company that raised a fair amount of money and was out there just, pushing sales and doing stuff in kind of the larger corporate structure. But that was an interesting thing to go out and start helping people open their own brokerages.
So let's talk about that for a minute. You give one person a set of tools and you give another person a set of tools. What do you think is the differentiating factor of why one succeeds and why one doesn't?
Well, I think in hindsight, it was very easy. Like that business, it's not a terrible idea, and I still do it to a certain extent today. But what happens is everything is so nuanced between like what's going to make you successful isn't necessarily what's going to make the next person successful. And often you have different whys. Like, why am I getting up every single day? Like, what's my motivation? And then what skill set do I have? And there's just so much nuance between two people that you couldn't build a one size fits all business to go ahead and launch or to help people open their own brokerage. And they all had different fundamental problems on the back end. So they each brought different things to the table. And my initial solve for everything, like any good person is you just throw more tech at it, right? It must be that I need more tools. So sales are a little bit sluggish. Let me just take the next 6 months and build out a whole bunch of more tools, because it's either tools or marketing's fault. It's never my fault. I'm a mortgage guy. It's never been the sales guy's fault. It's been marketing's or rates or somebody's or the president's. Like somebody else is always to blame.
Yeah, it's fun. I mentioned it earlier, death by 1,000 tools. I've written a couple of newsletters on it, but at the end of the day, like when you have so many tools, the only tool is you, because they're all using you. You're not using them. And I'm glad you said that about the nuances of different entrepreneurs. So I've been approached, I don't know, for 5 or 7 years, like to write a book. And I don't know how I do what I do. It's just, I get up, I show up, I test, fail, learn, and grow. And that's really what leads to success. But there's so much dependent upon the jockey and not really the horse. You can give, two people the same horse, the best jockey is going to win. And that applies in business as well. So you kind of launched that. What was next?
Yeah. So sales were a little bit sluggish and it wasn't going where I kind of thought. So I did a step back, and after a lot of years, at different places, different organizations, some of them, very functioning at a super high level, I stepped back and started to say, well, what are people really paying for? If you're out there and you're in a business, I've got a little saying over here that says, different is better than better. And if you think about that, often we'll try and do this thing where we incrementally are going to try and make, especially if you're starting a business, you're going to incrementally try and make your product just slightly better. Well, if you can be different and separate yourself from the next person, like what makes me different than someone else? And that's where I kind of like took the business and said, there's individual people that are reaching out to me. They have a desired result or a desired outcome. What can I provide them that's different than the next person to help them get closer to their goals, one step closer to their dreams? And I really did a deep dive on a lot of the people I was talking to that I wasn't selling. And I started looking at what kind of key constraints do they have. And what I found is it's not just in business, it's life as a whole. Every single one of us, you were talking to those snipers or whoever, we all at any given time have 1 to 3 kind of key constraints inside of our lives that if we were to just fix those things all other areas of our life get better. And so I really started to lean into that with my clientele. Like, let's figure out what are your 3 key constraints. And sometimes there's constraints that are outside of, an employer's control. If you're at home and you're fighting with your spouse every night and it's not safe and you don't have food for your kids, well, like, you got to fix that before you can do something else.
Right.
And often we'll try and fix, we're trying to fix a problem here where we've got some just core things that are foundation. So I went in and started looking at, after a lot of just adding new tech and trying to add bells and whistles, went through and kind of just redid my whole offering to where now I'm like, people are paying to get me in my 28 years. And let me just get very nuanced and help solve your individual problems. And those things. And then I started bringing on clients, all over the place. And CEO 1440 is the consulting company, but it's really a way of life. You are the CEO of your 1,440 minutes every day. And anybody listening to that, ultimately you are in charge of you.
Yeah, it starts with self-leadership. So a couple things that you said, one of our previous guests and a longtime friend of mine, Josh Linkner, he's here in Detroit, runs Mudita Ventures, but he worked with Dan Gilbert on Detroit Venture Partners. He was on and he talks about what would it take to put you out of business 6 months from now? And that's like the mindset you have to have, is to continually be evolving as if your competitor was. So that was in response to a lot of the Me Too people out there, right? They want to be exactly like someone else. But what you said, it's better to be different, right? And so it's creating that differentiation. And one question I want to ask you is, when you ask people what are their top 3 constraints, can they just rattle them off the top of their head? Or are they kind of like, well, I don't really know? Or they, name 20 of them. Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, it's very rarely do people, they lack the self-awareness a lot of times to even know what they are. So I'm just fortunate inside of the mortgage space, after being here for so many years, I can kind of pick them out the same way, somebody that I've listened to, this Dave Burke guy who's part of like the whole Jocko thing when they were in Top Gun. Yeah. Like he's in that program, you fly jet so much that you can just feel it. And as I go back through my years, I'm a level 3 ski instructor. So you can't be any higher certified than what I am. And I could just look at people skiing and could say like, oh, they're leaning back. Their buckle's not buckled tight enough just by doing enough reps. So when I sit down and talk with people, I can figure out very quickly what area of their business is really clunky and how I can fix it inside of the mortgage space. So they often don't know what it is. They just know they have a problem and don't necessarily know how to fix it. And like most people, myself included, when I don't know what to do, I dabble in 1,000 things. So a lot of people that I talk with, and maybe people that are listening, you wake up in the morning with the best intentions, like of what you're going to do, like you're going to advance the business forward, yet you go to bed tonight, you didn't really move forward at all. You just kind of spun your wheels and you didn't have a game plan. So by limiting it down to like, here's the 2 or 3 things we're going to work on for the next quarter, and nothing else matters, we're just going to do that. Yep. Really becomes helpful. And it's easy to figure out once you've been and looked at it. And often if you were giving someone else advice about their business, would be the advice, we just need to take it for ourselves. We're terrible at taking our own advice.
Yeah. And there's no way you got that level 3 skiing in Michigan.
I actually did get it in Michigan. Wow. But you still have to, right? It's a whole process though. Like that, anything that is like, when I went and did it, they had about a 20%, 15% pass rate.
Yep.
So people would go and take the exam and most people would fail. And you just fail. And then they'd give you the 1 or 2 things that you needed to work on to be able to fail forward and go and do something better the next time. And it wasn't like go and work on all of it. You had to work on very subtle things. And I think the same when somebody hires somebody to be on their board, they're looking for a very unique skill set, what makes you different. And that unique skill set is why they bring you in. And they want you to help solve that particular problem. And we just need to do a better job as individuals of identifying our personal key constraint.
So we've gone through the test. We've gone, mostly through some of the failure, but at the end of the day, like, what were people really buying from you? Was it the tools, or what do they want from you? What do people want?
So people at the end of the day that work with me, they're paying for two things. Thing number one, and I think that this is the world as a whole, you want certainty. I want to know if I do thing A, B, and C, I'll get result D, E, and F. And there are no guarantees, but that's what you pay for every single time, regardless of where you go. You go to McDonald's because you know there's certainty that the fries are going to taste a certain way. So I think just as human nature, we're risk adverse. So thing number one, they're paying for certainty because I've been there and done it, and have, other people that have done it as well. So people come to you because they pay for certainty. And then the second thing, people don't want to make a mistake. So they're fearful of doing anything where they're going to make a mistake. So they want to be certain that they're not going to make mistakes. And that's why people pay for anything.
Yeah. And one other thing I picked up from our conversation, right, is you're able to deliver outcomes. And so, it's not about the tools. I agree on the certainty piece because people lack self-confidence, fear of failure. But with your experience and the way you're going about things, like, you're able to produce outcomes, which I see as, really such a powerful shift, because we kind of talk about our personal brand. We talk about sales strategies, but you're on LinkedIn, you're on social media. Everyone says they're an expert. Everyone says they're a guru, but it really just comes down to trust, right? Are you selling the thing, or are you selling the confidence that's going to get you the results? So your point about narrowing it into one constraint, two constraints, that's really where it's at. And it's not as simple as it sounds. People think and are creatures of habit. Like you said, they wake up in the morning, okay, I'm going to change the world, and boom, they're on their cell phone, distracted, get sucked into, LinkedIn doom scrolling, check their email, and boom, all of a sudden it's 5 o'clock. So we've kind of gone through this process, and what everyone wants is the growth part of what they're doing. And we talk about the struggle zone, 70, 80% of your time you're going to spend struggling. But how do you turn that learning from failure into actual growth?
Well, I think thing number one, if you actually want to grow, you have to identify what the areas are. So I need to know what I'm trying to do, and then actually do things that will help you accomplish that particular problem. And I like to think of somebody that, like fitness. I have a degree in exercise physiology, is what I went to school for way back in the day. And, like people doing pull-ups. Most people's biggest limiting factor on doing pull-ups is not the muscles in their back. It's not their biceps. It's their grip strength. So if doing pull-ups is your objective, work on your grip strength. You can probably do more pull-ups. So it's identifying that I need to work on my grip strength and not maybe my back muscles to do that. So identifying the problem and then coming up with a framework to attack it. And I actually have two different ways that I like to coach people. Thing number one, I call it an OPA. And the way that works, and it's not the flaming cheese that you get down.
First thing that came to mind,
Yeah. If you've ever been to a Greek restaurant here in Michigan, they serve this flaming cheese and somebody yells OPA when it happens. But and this is something that I learned back at my days at Rocket. It's the O is for outcome, the P is for purpose, and A is for the action steps. And often we try and get an outcome. I can't get an outcome without the action steps. So I must first define, what is my desired outcome? Why do I want to do it? That's the purpose. And then map out your action steps of what you actually need to do day in, day out to accomplish that. And then hold yourself accountable to those action steps. And I coach people on doing what I call also start, stops, and continues. What things do I need to start doing today to get me to that outcome? What things do I need to stop doing? What's hindering me from? And what do I need to do to continue doing to elicit that response? So if I can put together an OPA statement, some starts, stops, and continues, I can move myself on a trajectory where I'm moving forward every day. And that's ultimately all that matters, is just get a little bit better today than you were yesterday. And who cares what everybody else thinks? It doesn't matter. You're competing against yourself, and that's it.
Yeah, and coaching entrepreneurs and advising them, and I even notice it with myself, like it's more difficult to stop doing what you shouldn't be doing than it is to do more of what you're not doing. Like it's just, we always think more is better, but you have to slow down to speed up. So let's get into the actual like foundation builder program. So what is it? You got focused one-on-one coaching, these sprints. Is there any science behind the 90 to 120 day sprints? Like to walk us through like the actual program and how it's evolved. Yeah.
Yeah. So when somebody comes in and they're looking at, let's say they've been struggling, they're a loan officer and they're doing, 3 closings a month and they're trying to get to 10. Well, the first thing we have to do is identify what their key constraints are. So the way that we do that, I do what's called the foundation building program. You just think about, anything, you have to have a solid foundation on the bottom. And we go through and we look at that through 3 different lenses. Is it a problem with their skills? So do they actually know what to do? Is it the how to do it? Or do they lack systems? And no table, no nothing will stand if it's only on 2 legs. You have to have 3. So we first go and identify their key constraints. And what we do over a 12-week window, we do 10 one-on-one calls. And you want to make sure if you're ever doing one-on-one calls or that you're putting effort into something, make sure that it's actually worth the time. Like don't do an hour call just to do an hour call, because sometimes your most valuable things are the things that you say no to. So you don't want to waste your time. It's too valuable. But we go through, we do a 12-week program. We identify 1 to 3 key constraints, 12 weeks. We hit it with 10 calls. And then every night I do nightly accountability. Did you do the things that you needed to? How are we doing on our start, stops, and continues? And we just attack and whittle away at those little problems. And I've found that it's very hard to do anything for longer than 90 days. So everything we do is in short-term sprints. Let's get to that next milestone and then move forward from there. And that's, if you're climbing a mountain, let's look at the next peak. Where do I need to go? Let's get to there. And let's try not to worry about where I'm going to be in 15 years. If you're a newer mortgage broker and you're trying to compare your marketing to what Rocket's doing,
good luck.
Yeah, they're on chapter, that book, they're on chapter 7,000. You're on chapter 2.
Right.
Like it's not going to read the same. And so you have to have very clear expectations of yourself.
No, I love this. It's, and it's hard for entrepreneurs, visionaries, right? Chasing shiny objects, but like what you're doing, right? You're distilling from kind of throwing everything at the wall. And I love the foundation building plug, House of Bricks. I didn't pay you to do that, but love it. Thanks for putting that in there. And we talk about building brick by brick, right? You can't build the whole house in a day, and whether it's a failure or what you view as a success, that's a brick in the foundation. You grow from the success, you learn from the failure and stack them one by one. And it's really just narrowing those constraints into a handful. Because if you try to solve everything, you're not going to solve anything. So what I love about this is you're taking your experience and you really can't skip the struggle zone, but people can optimize it through people that have paid, what David Meltzer says is, paid the dummy tax. Like I've paid a lot of dummy tax through mistakes, and, you're able to help, whether it's early stage or new founders, just skip some of those, dumb mistakes, trying to do too much at once. So kind of before we wrap up here, what I saw really is, your big promise, right, is if you take no action, nothing changes. It's the compound effect, doing the small things consistently over time that make a big impact. But, that small step, the first one's the hardest. You have to start before you're ready, because you never are. But I loved you're the CEO of your 1,440 minutes every day. Like people don't look at it like that. They're like, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur, but you are the CEO of your own life. And when you break it down like that, it's like, man, I got 1,440 minutes to make an impact today. And I always love the excuse, like, sorry, I didn't have time. Well, we're all given 24 hours in a day. So it's like, what really is important for you? So as we wrap up, any closing thoughts? And we do have a large audience, or followers that are kind of in the mortgage space. So mortgage companies that are out there, like what are a couple questions they can ask themselves? And I know you wouldn't ask me to do this, but if people want to work with you, how do they get a hold of you? And if they're looking for coaching?
Well, I'll touch on a couple of different things. I guess if people want to get a hold of me, I mean, I'm right here on LinkedIn. I post all the time. I have a actual free group for loan officers where they can come in, get a sniff of it, check things out. If you can find me all over the place, but if you go to themortgagebrokerbuilder.com or just find me on LinkedIn, message me. I'm very receptive to doing anything there. If you look at things it's an incremental pathway, and the more effort you put in, like Nike has a CEO right now that started as an intern, right? They worked their way all the way up. And whether you're an entrepreneur, there's a really large segment of the world that are entrepreneurs. They're working inside of another business, running their own business. And you're the CEO of that. You determine where your kids go to school, what belief systems they have, everything inside of your world. When you take massive ownership, it's all yours. There is nothing happens in my world that I am not at least in control of how I react to it. And having a very strong foundation of where you're trying to go is super important. I actually got something out here. This is my book that I live by. All of my decisions are made from this one book. It's about 7 years old now that I did this, but it says in here Project 100. And this has nothing to do with mortgages, but I want to live to be 100 years old. And so about 7 years ago or so, I decided, I had a young kid, second marriage. I decided I wanted to live to be 100. And I quit chewing tobacco. I stopped doing a lot of things. And most of my decisions throughout the course of my day are made off of one litmus test. And this is as the CEO. Will this activity in the next minute, will this help me get to 100 or hurt me? And granted, I'm not perfect. Like there's times, set a dozen donuts down in front of me. It probably is not helpful, but very enjoyable at the time. But I try to live by that little litmus test here. Is this going to move me in the direction that I'm going to do that? And I think as a business owner or anyone, make all of your decisions based on that. Like there used to be those bracelets that people would wear, what would Jesus do? Well, what would you do if your net result is like, you've got a lot of shareholders? Make sure that every action is putting you one step closer to doing that. And then just don't lie to yourself. It's binary. It either is or is not. So go out there and just attack. And for any mortgage people that are listening, I think right now you've got a very unique, there's a unique time where you've got companies like what Rocket has just done by, Rocket went out and spent $10 billion making some major purchases. And a couple of years back, they bought Truebill. So they're moving higher up in the funnel. So their mortgage leads now probably start as a kid getting out of college. And they're going to nurture that for 12 years along the way until they're ready. Like first time home buyer right now is at 38 years old.
Wow.
So there's a long gap there. They're going to be higher up in the funnel. So mortgage companies look higher up in the funnel, and how do you add value to somebody that's maybe 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the road? And how do you nurture them and do those kind of things? And sending your pumpkin spice latte recipe, the week before Thanksgiving through your crappy CRM with your crappy AI automations, it's not going to be enough to win in the market that we're moving forward in. And so I just think, focus on brand and adding value. And adding value is something that everybody needs to define. And I think it's a catchphrase. Well, I add value. But when I ask people, what do you mean by adding value? They don't actually know. So determine what is your value proposition, what makes you different, and then go out there and execute on that.
I love disrupting industries. In 2008, right? My mobile technology company, we were optimizing websites to work on iPhones, healthcare analytics business that went public a couple years ago, right? I mean, just the whole healthcare system's pretty broken. But the mortgage business, like you said, or industry is ripe for disruption. So the ones that introduce the right technology and the right experience, being able to nurture their clients. And just because you're sending them something doesn't mean you're adding value. So what do they really want? And Rocket's always a thought leader. So although you can't be them, it's important to pay attention to the trend. So John, I mean, listen, thank you. This has been really a masterclass in terms of business strategy, identifying your key constraints, and really for people to get clarity in what it is that they're doing. So activity doesn't always equal progress, and we have to slow down times to speed up. So this is something I will probably remember forever, as being the CEO of my 1,440 minutes, never broken it down like that, but love the mindset and everything you're doing. So I love inspiring entrepreneurs, helping early stage founders. And whether you're early stage or not, there's massive value in just outside eyes looking in, because, you know, sometimes you're too far in the forest to see the trees, or two in the trees to see the forest. I always get that one wrong. But anyway, you're in a forest, you got trees. The point is you need outside advice and coaching. So thanks again for jumping on, and let's stay connected, because like I said, I'm working with some mortgage companies here locally, and I also have a mortgage lead business. So anyone listening can definitely reach out to us. We're helping mortgage companies grow through quality data, leads, and every lead company says their leads are the best, but ours are for sure the Glengarry Leads, the best movie of all time for sales. So John, thanks again for joining. We'll see everybody next week on Test, Fail, Learn, Grow.
Appreciate it. Thank you.